Hello, those of you who don't know me, I'm Taryn. I'm the CEO of Developmental Disability WA, and the last couple of days has been particularly exciting for our organisation because this is the first conference actually that we've hosted, and it's been fantastic to have the support of the Disability Services Commission in making this happen. It's been an awesome example of family leadership. Unfortunately, you can hear from my voice that my throat's a little raspy. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be part of yesterday to hear all of the conversations and to feel what that energy around family leadership has felt like over the last couple of days, but the feedback that I've had has been really positive. We're the state's peak body for people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities and their families. We're a membership-based organisation, and our primary membership is people who are living with developmental disabilities and their families, and also the various service provider organisations that support them, support groups, peer support groups, some of which many of you will be part of, people who have a long-standing interest in advancing the human rights and the interests of people with developmental disabilities and their families. We've been around for 25 years. We used to be called Developmental Disability Council of WA, and in the last 5 years we've undergone quite a lot of changes to help make sure that we're a sustainable organisation and to help bring some clarity to the way it is that we work with people to bring about change and to lead positive change for people with developmental disabilities and their families. And one of the most exciting things for me in the 5 years that I've been in this role has been the work that we've started to do in this space of this work that we call supporting people with behaviours that can sometimes be challenging, because it's been an opportunity for us to test all the different tools that we use in our toolkit and to help progress this idea of a developmental model of family leadership that I'm going to talk about this afternoon, and which might be a bit of a frame of reference for you in thinking about some of the where to from here. So the way that we work to influence change is laid out on our little banner here, advocacy, policy and community. So our first and foremost way of connecting with people is around building the voice of people with developmental disabilities and their families, so they can have a strong voice in the advocacy that affects their lives. So any of you who were part of the stream that Maxine Drake was in the pre-afternoon tea session will have talked about the need for us as advocates to take up less space and to support people and their families to take up more space, to seize the power and the natural authority that you all have in your lives to be the best advocates that you can be for your sons and daughters. And our role in that is to support families to build their advocacy skills by connecting them with resources and information and education opportunities and social or connection and human opportunities like the chance that you've had over the last couple of days, so that people know that they're not alone and that they can help to draw power from each other and the examples that we all set to each other of the way that we advocate in life. Policy, we work with members of parliament, with ministers, with bureaucrats, with government agencies, with service providers, all trying to influence the various places in which decisions are being made, not necessarily in people's individual lives, but more at that systemic level, the people that set the rules, if you like, of the games that we're all involved in with advocates, either as families or as professionals. And also in community, we're partnering with other organisations to try and make the places in the world that you as families are interacting with, to help them to be more welcoming and more responsive to the needs that yourselves have and the children that you're supporting, the people in your family who you love and support. And in the time that I've been in this space, I've heard a lot of conversations from other places and people bringing experiences of this thing that we call family leadership back to WA, and wanting to get a sense of what might this thing called family leadership look like in Western Australia, and how could we make it flourish in a way that it seemed to be doing in different places. Many of you will have heard people talk about the experience in Canada, which seems to be the mecca for family leadership, and I know lots of people that have come back from trips to Canada with so much enthusiasm and wanting to share those experiences and the lessons from that here, and getting a sense that we weren't being able to quite have the impact that people wanted to do. And so what were some of the things that were standing in the way of that? So myself and some other people started to have a conversation with a whole lot of families who were involved in something that they call family leadership, because we wanted to get a sense of what this thing meant to different people. And in doing that work, it won't surprise anyone to know that it meant different things to different people, that people all had very different ways of understanding what family leadership meant, and they all had different ways in which they wanted to be involved. not everybody wants to change the world. Some people want to change the world. Some people want to be influencing things at that policy level that we call the systemic level, but other people were really wanting to make a difference first and foremost in the lives of their own family, in the lives of their own child. So how did we make sense of this, and how could we put all these different ways that people understood family leadership and wanted to be involved in family leadership into a way that made sense, and into a way that would help us to invest in and support and understand and would help us to really progress very much locally in the Western Australian context, which is very different from other places. It's different to other places in Australia, and one of the things that's been different in Western Australia compared to other places has been local area coordination. And as an advocate, one of the things I've often said about local area coordination, or LACs as most of us know it, is that LACs are great, but in some ways from an advocacy point of view, what they do in terms of influencing change is potentially put out fires, because the LAC in your life is working really hard to support the families that they work with to resolve the issues that come up in a day-to-day way. But what happens when you can then connect those little bits of fire, if you like, together, you get that bushfire effect, where all of those people having a shared experience are coming together, sharing their stories, and with that collective energy and that collective weight of experience and sheer numbers of people, you create a mechanism to influence change. So we sat and we listened and we thought about, well, how would we describe family leadership, and how could we describe it in a way that understood that it seemed to me that there was an idea of development here. So we talk about wanting families to be part of the changing the system, but we can't expect families to change the system if we actually haven't helped to connect families. And we can't expect families to want to be able to connect with each other if they're actually not in a place where they're feeling strong within their own family. So I started to toy with this idea that maybe family leadership was something that was developmental, that it was something that you could build and provide opportunities for people to be involved in ways that were relevant to them at their point in life, and the kind of energy that they had available. Because as I know you all know, sometimes we have quite high levels of energy and we think we want to be involved in lots of things, and other times we're a little bit more tired and need to really focus our energies on the things that are most important to us at that point in time. And I like to do things in threes. Three seems to me a nice sensible number. I can remember it when I'm giving talks like this. You can fit it on a banner, and I think it gives people enough to work with and understand, but also give you some room to move. So the developmental model for family leadership that we came up with goes like this. The first step of it is that I lead my family. And that, I guess, aligns with this concept of advocacy we have, that people first and foremost need to be in a position of strength within their own family, need to feel confident and able to meet the needs of their own family first. And sometimes that means having to prioritise a whole lot of different things, make some choices, set some goals, get some help in doing that sometime. But the first step that we saw in this idea of developmental family leadership was the concept of I lead my family. And some of the things that we've heard talk about today, and some of the things that have happened in Western Australia, like the positive behaviour support teams, have been one way of helping people to lead their own family, connecting people with support at really important times to help meet the needs that they have. The second aspect of that family leadership model was We Share Together, and the last 2 days have been an amazing experience of that. Any of you who are involved in support groups, and we have become aware of so many of them across the state in Western Australia, and working with a range of them in Metro and regional WA, we share together, gathering that strength from each other, sharing ideas, sharing inspiration, knowing that you're not alone. And the third aspect of it being that we change the system. So when you've broken down some of those barriers, you've started to connect with people, you recognise that there's a shared experience and a sense of community often between people who have some of those things in common. Using all of those things that we know, how can we connect with people who have other sets of skills? So for us as advocates, how can we then help those people who've shared those experiences together, transform that into something that changes the system? And when I look at WA, I think we're really good in Western Australia at sharing together. We're actually quite good through LACs, through support groups, through lots of opportunities of bringing people together. What we haven't necessarily been so good at is strengthening that I lead my family. Laura Jones talking, for example, earlier about the importance of communication and just how many families are struggling with knowing how to be able to support their sons and daughters to communicate. So we haven't necessarily been as impactful and spread those benefits as widely as we could. And the other thing that organisations like mine are here to do, and we're still learning how to do that most effectively, is we change the system. And I think some of the things that you've talked about today will be issues that are very particular ones in individual circumstances, and some of them will be systemic issues. And we're beginning to model some of those things, particularly in the area of education, and looking at how in all of the different areas that you as families are interacting, where some of the challenges that you're having are presenting a challenge for your advocacy, how do we apply that model and those ideas to find the most powerful and the most impactful and the most sustainable way to support you in your lives in the ways that are meaningful, but also to contribute to change that is going to have a lasting impact and affect more people. So that's just some takeaway thoughts in the reflections that we may have, and that's the model that we're working with to try and think about some ways that we might work with people into the future to continue to progress the issues we've talked about the last couple of days. Thank you.